York are really quiet right now. So, now we've heard from the federal government that there will be sort of funding for small businesses, right? So there's the SBA, there's the PPP. But I've also heard complaints that those fundings are not coming in fast enough for small businesses. So do you have any comments on that? If you're an owner of a small business, what are the things that you can do right now?
Yes, that is correct. We got basically on a PPP paycheck protection program designed for small businesses, which is 500 employees and down. However, I have seen and heard that the one that got the money, the PPP, is most big company.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the evidence and facts going on right now that most of the big banks is shuffling the PPP. So basically, they shuffle where they pay out to the biggest businesses in a way, preferential treatment. And then the small businesses have not received anything, even though most of them filed the PPP before the big businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a class action going on right now suing 10 banks, JP Morgan, US Bank, Bank of America, so on, for shuffling PPP paycheck protection program. So there is a class action going on right now.
I see.
I heard there's a stimulus package that just signed for another 300-400 million so that it can stimulate. So hopefully this time the small businesses get some paycheck protection program.
I see. So yeah, we'll expect some tough time going forward. So I wanted to sort of jump right into the lawsuit that's supposed to be sort of the topic of this interview. So, from what I gathered, now we have at least 6 lawsuits that have been filed against China in U.S. federal courts, and those lawsuits seek damages for death, injuries, and economic losses caused by COVID-19. And so 5 of the lawsuits, including California, are class action suits filed on behalf of persons and businesses in the United States who have suffered business losses and personal injuries and damages related to the outbreak. So can you just walk us through sort of the lawsuit that you are representing? Who are you representing? Who are the relevant parties, and what we are trying to achieve through the lawsuit?
Yes. If you follow us, what we have done, we filed a lawsuit on April 8th, 2020. We represent 3 small businesses. They are the class rep. So basically, on the class action that we filed a lawsuit on behalf of businesses, and usually we have the class rep. But it doesn't mean that we only filed a lawsuit for these 3 businesses. If we represent all small businesses in California, so it would be probably 30 million plus small businesses that we are representing. The class rep is Cardiff Prestige Property, which is a real estate company. First Premier X is a property management company. Le Saigon Chamber of Commerce, Vietnamese American Culture Education Fund, those are the class reps. As an attorney, class action attorney, I and my partner, which is attorney WallStTV, and several more other attorneys on our team, we have drafted this lawsuit and we have filed it with the U.S. Central District Court. And you can obtain the case number and the docket through the federal court. The reason we filed is that in November 2019, there was the discovery of the coronavirus, and somehow the government of China, the Wuhan Health Department, the National Health Commission of Republic of China, Emergency Management of the People's Republic of China, Ministry of Community Affairs of People's Republic of China, did not forewarn the world regarding this pandemic, how dangerous it is. So, as evidence of that, we are suffering. The whole world, including the United States and California, as in my lawsuit, has suffered such severe damages to all of the business, all the individual in California. Our lawsuit is tailored on negligence. We never say it's intentional, it's negligent. It means that they have a duty and they breached that duty. They didn't forewarn. And then because of that, there's a causation and damages. So with that, it caused the damages, and that's why we seek damages. And also we are suing on strict liability. It means that when China has Wuhan blast, which is the allegation, and based on a lot of evidence, is that the coronavirus have been known, and it was somewhat mutated in that labs. And we suspect that it leaks from the labs and it caused the coronavirus, COVID-19, explode. So because of that, that's a strict liability lawsuit. So, and also there's a lot of evidence that some doctors in China have discovered, and he has said that the corona, which is Dr. Li Wingling, he was a whistleblower. He said there's this new virus, and there's an existence of this virus, and it's so dangerous. However, he was shut down. He was arrested. He was, kind of like cannot continue to let the world know regarding the seriousness of the virus. So those are evidence I can see, but then there's more and more evidence as you see that the lawsuits going on. Then we have a lawsuit by state of Missouri, but we are the first lawsuit in California class action. We are the first. There's other lawsuit in Texas, Florida, and recently several senators have go on the floor and introduce a bill regarding, the damages, as well as they want China to be accountable for the damages that COVID-19 causing around the world, as well as United States.
I see. So yeah, so there's a, it's a very packed statement. I mean, there are lots of, stuff there that we're going to dip into later on. But I wanted to start with this idea of sovereign immunity. The idea is that, these lawsuits are likely to be dismissed because, foreign governments can enjoy immunity from suits in the U.S. courts under the FSIA, so the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. Can you comment on that remark a little bit? Is the Chinese government immune from those lawsuits based on the FSIA?
Yes, technically. However, the law in the United States is operate on precedent, case precedent, and there's an exception to the FISA, which is a Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act of 1976, 28 U.S.C. Section 1602. And particularly exception 1605A2 for the act outside of the territory of the United States in connection with commercial activity of the defendant that cause a direct effect into the United States. And under Section 1605A5 for money damages for loss of property occurring in the United States and caused by the tortious act or omission of the defendant, or any official or employee of defendant while acting within the scope of his office or employment. So there's exception. So we see that it's going to be a fight. It's going to be, if the law is always two-sided, it's going to be an argument regarding sovereignty, and then we're going to have a county argument regarding the exception. And then right now what I see is state Missouri is filing a lawsuit, and they have to overcome the same thing as well as the argument of the government of China. But this lawsuit will have them take notice that they have to pay for damages. My intention is to introduce this class action and then we'll go under the exception of the Foreign Sovereignty Act.
I see. So, I also wanted to talk a little bit about sort of the political aspects of this. The U.S.-China relationship is in sort of all-time low right now, and we see a lot of, blaming from both sides. So do you think there's a political temptation behind all those blamings, in the sense that, now it's an election year, it's going to be politically attractive for, a candidate to go against China and, allow lawsuits against China? Do you see that as part of the reason why there have been so many lawsuits sort of bubbling up all across the United States?
Politically, so many things going on right now. I agree with you, there's election coming. Politically, because this COVID-19, the Democrat as well as the Republican have to look at it, but bipartisanly, they have to look at it as a pandemic. And this pandemic causing, it originates from Wuhan. And there's a Wuhan labs. And there's a allegation that this coronavirus escaped from the Wuhan labs. Possibly was tested by the bat. Somehow the bat causing, the virus to escape through, and then become human-to-human transmission. I see a lot of, there is a political issue, but many things going on, just like, but we just want to mainly focus on my lawsuit. Is California suffered a lot of damages. And this lawsuit is not to make money. It's not to create names. It's not anything. It's just to recover the damages that's happening to the resident as well as small businesses in California and the United States. That is mainly all intention.
I see. So I actually have a follow-up question there. So we know, the idea of sovereign immunity is very much based on reciprocity. So, basically, United States grant sovereign immunity to other countries, not to, as a favor to other countries, but because, we expect other countries to respect and protect our immunity. But do you think there's a chance that China will retaliate in some other ways against those lawsuits? And what are some of the potential retaliations China could implement in the event of those lawsuits?
As a litigator, as a class action attorney, as a civil litigator, we handle many high-profile cases. When we file a lawsuit, the other side usually within a lot of time reply. Certain time they can cost something. However, the party that sue without merit usually will face malicious prosecution as well as abuse of process. And in turn, they can be sanctioned. They can have to pay for their frivolous lawsuit. So those are strategy. But retaliation-wise, in other way, I would not know, because that would be more of United States, the war, the different issue. I'm more of the litigator. Thank you.
I see. But as you mentioned, sort of the reason for this lawsuit is really because of the heavy damage the state of California and small businesses in the state of California have suffered because of the COVID-19 outbreak. But suppose you guys win the lawsuit, right? So in the event that the court made a judgment against China, then the Chinese government could potentially refuse to pay any award, right? Potentially that would lead to years of litigation in U.S. courts. So if that happens, what are some of the other strategies that you would use to actually make China compensate for the losses that the state of California and its people and businesses have suffered?
Yes. Usually when, let's say we have the class action we serve and then we litigate it with the federal district court and we have a judgment, then the judgment would uphold. After that would be another procedure called post-judgment relief. It means that now we're going after the judgment. Let's say China does not comply to the judgment, which I think is very difficult because they have a lot of trade with California and then as well as the United States. By not complying with the judgment that is valid, they have a lot of risk on their trade, their merchandise, their assets in the United States as well as California. I'm sure there's trillion and trillion dollars in trade every week, every month, as well as a trillion of assets in the United States and California. So by not complying with a valid judgment, that will substantially impede their trade ability as well as the assets in the California and United States.
I see. So now I wanted to go back a little bit, to the evidence that you point out. So there was one piece of evidence that was especially contentious, which is that this virus might have been deliberately leaked from a Chinese lab, or something like that, right? So that's a very contentious topic, actually. I think the politicians are divided on this. The science community thinks otherwise. So if you were to establish the case that it was by China's fault, or so China willfully leaked this this virus from its lab, what other pieces of evidence you would need to find, in addition to some of the stories you've heard, some of sort of the tangential evidence that we've had?
Yes, Lizzie. There's some allegation that is willfully, wanton, intentional. However, our lawsuit is not based on willfulness or intentional conduct. Our lawsuit is based on negligence. It means that they have a duty to protect, duty to let the world know regarding the extreme new virus, COVID-19, so that people start quarantine, start getting ready, and in order to stop that pandemic. However, they didn't do that duty, which is China is a superpower. United States is a superpower. And as a superpower, you have a utmost highest duty to do these things. Our lawsuit is over duty breach. It's not intentional. Maybe there's some contentious evidence that it's intentional, but I don't have to prove that.
I see.
It's only proving negligence.
I see.
And then as the wheel turning after the lawsuit, many things coming out. But my lawsuit is only based on negligence.
I see. So you mentioned sort of the heavy loss, but of small businesses and also people and the state of California. So how much do you want from China in terms of how much do you want them to pay, and how do you come up with the number?
Well, we look at how many businesses in California. We looked at how much damages to every business. It's all shut down. Look at all the employees at home not working. Looking at the unemployment filing, and we come up with a round figure of 8,000 trillion.
That's a huge number.
Yes.
Yeah. So now when we look at the news, we hear those comparisons between China and United States. Do you also think the United States also played a part in causing those damages in terms of how the health system and the the public health system is not fully prepared for a pandemic, and there has been a lot of bureaucracy and red tapes before this before it was too late? So do you think the United States government was also culpable in some sense in the outbreak, in the situation we have right now?
Well, as I possibly could be a counter argument. However, as I recall, that WHO has said that they should reopen the wet market. WHO has said that China has it under control. Those statements made by WHO as well. You have seen most of the news recently regarding WHO and the United States have stopped funding WHO, with those statements, you put in a false sense of security to the world that China had this thing in control. And he even suggests to reopen the wet market. So if the virus comes from the wet market or the Wuhan lab, and you know that they had it under control, and then you can reopen the wet market, the whole world would say, well, hey, it's too far away, probably not will not come here. So that's the part of the reason why there was a funding stop to WHO, and because of those statements, and that gave a false sense of security. That's why the epidemic was able to go everywhere around the world. And right now, the death as well as the COVID-19 is keep rising and rising. That's what I think.
I see. So, when we talk about sort of the relationship between US and China, and also, how to hold China accountable, we sort of hear two different strands of thinking, right? So the first strand of thinking goes like, oh, China just withheld information from the rest of the world. That's why we ended up here. So we should hold China accountable and make China pay. And the second, strand of thinking would go like, oh, let bygones be bygones, right? So now it's important to cooperate because we still need China, in developing a vaccine, in developing all kinds of therapeutic measures and treatment to actually stop this, this outbreak. So my sense is that you're more of the, the first strand of thinking. But do you see?
I'm actually both.
Interesting.
Yeah, I want China to continue to develop vaccine and medicine, but I also want China to pay for damages. So I'm actually both.
I see. But do you worry?
And I think that would be, yeah.
Sorry. So do you worry that, say, because of those lawsuits, China would actually say, withhold strategic, say, PPE from the United States to actually make, the United States' life deliberately harder just because of those lawsuits? So it's going to be, an eye-to-eye situation, and it's going to escalate into further, further wars and, even more hostilities. Do you worry about that?
That's the job of the president, President Trump. I'm only a litigator. And as a litigator, I see that in tort law, or let's just say tort law, in personal injury law, if you have to make the plaintiff whole, it means that you have to bring whatever happened, you have to bring them back to status quo. It means that before the pandemic, you are this way. After the pandemic, you're like this. So let's bring you back to status quo. That is more of the litigator mentality. As for the COVID, sharing information, medical as well, vaccine, all that. That is a job of the president of both countries, the government. That's not mine.
So can you just give us sort of a timeline going forward? Now you've filed a lawsuit. What are the next steps, and what are some of the, the lampposts that we should be, on the watch out for in the next couple of months or in the next few years or so? What are the next steps?
Yes, the next step is to serve government of China. We have to reach out and serve them. And once it's served, that means the litigation in federal court is on. So then they have days to file an answer. They can deny flatly, or they can oppose it, or whatever. But the timeline is that they have to file an answer. If they don't file an answer, I can seek for default judgment. It means that we notify you, and you don't want an answer, so we win by default. So if we win by default, the next step is they can challenge that default, try to do a motion to set aside the default, or they can pay, or we have to move on the next level, which is post-judgment recovery. Now, if they answer within a lot of time, and there's no default judgment, then we have the discovery phase. Discovery phase means that we going to propound discovery and ask them to provide us proof with every allegation we ask. They have to show us that it's false, or they have to show us of whatever evidence they have regarding our allegation.
I see.
Then after that, then it will be a many motion between the two parties, and then when nobody can agree anything, it can reach to the end, which is the trial, the jury trial. Okay, so that I don't see happen very soon. The last class action that I represent, 6,000 individuals, took about 5 years. 5 years to go to trial, but fortunately, it's settled before trial.
I see. I see. So, we understand, like, class lawsuit like this is incredibly hard. So realistically, what's the probability of actually winning? By winning, I mean sort of getting the compensation that you ask for from China, in this lawsuit, on a scale of, 0 being totally impossible, 100% being, it's a shoe-in, it's easy. How would you put yourself and put this lawsuit on that scale at this point?
I have done many litigation in trial. Present many high profile cases. Many cases I filed lawsuit against government. I filed lawsuit against county. I filed lawsuit against chief of sheriff. We represent many Los Angeles cases regarding police brutality. Many times at the beginning, I see a lot of people comment, text me that I end up getting 0. Or they would say that I'm a small little guy and I'm suing a big, giant entity. There's a saying in Vietnamese, it's con kiến kiện củ khoai. It means that, almost like, what is that? It's like a small ant going against an elephant or something like that. Many times I heard that. So I don't know what it is anymore, because those cases I settled a high value. And when I saw everyone tell me I'm an ant suing an elephant, I heard that many times. So this case, not that I'm saying it's going to be that way. However, somebody got to do it. And I just have to do it. And of course, people are going to say that, and I accept it, but based on my past experience on high profile cases, they always say that. So the chance of probability to get, maybe, I don't know. But let's just start with 0.
I really appreciate the attitude and courage, and I wish you all the luck. And as you mentioned, this is going to be, it's going to take a while, so we will make sure to closely follow this lawsuit, and hopefully in some future time you can still join us for another interview when we receive further information from either the Chinese government or when we have further evidence from your side. Thank you so much, Attorney. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you, Lizzie, and I'm very happy to share my view on Mingji Media, and I hope to see you again, as well as all the audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been great talking to you. Bye for today.